So after seeing the demo, you probably have a better idea on how program codes like JavaScript, which embedded inside the HTML code, can modify the web page we see from the browser. Let's look closer to how web browser does the magic trick. As you may have known, a web browser is an application program sitting on your PC for viewing web pages, and the source code of web pages are created by the web server when the user requests it. A web browser is consisting of many components such as the networking component, parser, and interpreter. There are many functions that a browser can do, such as rendering, formatting, and finalize the layout of the presentation for the web page. This is why that sometimes it looks slightly different when you view the same web page from different brands of browsers. It's really interesting to see the step of getting the web page from a web server. First, you enter a URL, a web address such as http://timeascurrency.com, and the web browser using the networking component is requesting from the web server for such page. And the web server having a lot of different programming objects behind the scene. Once the web server receives the request, a lot of things are happening in the web server and trying to create a web page with all the source code needed for the request. So it creates a complete web page with HTML codes, the style sheets, CSS, and necessary JavaScript for the user to interact, to make the web page dynamic, so it's changeable. And finally, the web browser receives the source code, is going to use its rendering engine and then layout engine to final format the presentation that we see. Then it can be displayed on the web browser. At the last step, the web browser is able to combine all this information and give us a really good presentations on the information that we request. In this slide, I want to show you briefly about HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It acts like a container that's give you the content information and other programming pieces like JavaScript, style sheets. So the browser is going to parse the HTML code, and then it knows how to format the page because of the information contained in the HTML code. So let's look at the HTML code shown on the left. And notice the hypertext markup HTML is usually having an opening tag and a closing tag. And there's a header tag enclosing the title tag. And there's a body tag that enclosing and distinguish the visible content on the browser. So in this case, it renders as you see it on the right hand side, first name and last name. In this slide, I want to show you quickly about JavaScript. So when browser parse the HTML code and when it encounters the JavaScript, it has an interpreter to interpret JavaScript. And the purpose of JavaScript is to respond to the user input. So it can manipulate the web documents and then communicate with web server as well, especially when you press a button or do some action from the web browser. In this example, this JavaScript tells the browser to find the element with the ID called favorite and assign the word apple to this element. As a result, it shows my favorite fruit is apple when it renders. In this slide, I want to quickly demonstrate how CSS, the Stylesheet language, works. So when HTML is being parsed by the browser, and the browser see there's a opening and closing tag of style, it knows that this is a CSS Stylesheet information that they are receiving. So in this case, there's an element with ID equal to fruit, and it designates as a palm fruit. It identifies the element and replace the element with this information. So when we apply this CSS code, it tries to get the image of apple, and it's going to apply on the background of this tag with a certain width and certain height. When it renders by the browser, it will show something like this on the right hand side. So the purpose of CSS instructs how browser can format the information that it receives. This is how it looks like when browser renders these codes.